next Saturday. 26th, yeah. 10 to noon. Are you going to be there? Okay.
You have better basketball horseshoe. Only me, really. I like it. Horseshoe go in I couldn't keep up to him. Yeah. That's the only electric he is.
Try and turn it on. Check. There we go. Oh, Mitakiapi. It says it is. Oh, Mitakiapi. We want to welcome everybody here today on behalf of the Sisseton-Wahpeton Itancha, Delbert Hopkins. He's asked me to come to bring the Oyates Chanupa to be part of this important ceremony, the return of our relatives. Two young men that would actually be our Uncanas at this point in time in life. They would have lived a long life by now. These two young men that did not get to fulfill their lives because of the policy of the federal government to kill the Indian to save the man. These two young men did not get to fulfill their lives in being leaders in their families and other people. So we're very grateful today to be here to gather, to honor them, honor their lives. And as part of this, I am going to fill the chanupa at this time to begin this ceremony. And then after that, we'll bring in our colors as part of the honor also.
We'll be singing the staff song. Because this is the Dakota ceremony to honor these loved ones, they honor the staffs of the Kichita that have always stood for our people, to protect our people. They do not raise the American flag or any of the other flags at this time because they honor the Kichita in the protection of our people and the return of our relatives.
Oh, you can be seated. Opida. Opida to our Kichita that stand for us when we need them, that do these things that we need them to do, that we cannot do ourselves. We honor them and thank them for being the ones that will be responsible for going out to bring our relatives home. And as they've asked this man that stands with us, the staff, to stand for us when we are weak, to help us when we are weak, when we are tired. That staff stands for us when we cannot do these things on our own, and we need that helping hand. We thank everybody for coming today. We hope that those that could come from Spirit Lake have made it okay. Boy, the weather was terrible yesterday, so I'm glad they came the day before. Those that could not come, we remember them and think of them in the journey that they had. And those that came from here, we thank them. We thank the LaFramboise family for coming today, for being here. The Wahanata family from Spirit Lake, we thank them for coming. I've been asked by one of our former tribal chairmen, happens to be my brother-in-law, Mike Selvage, to say a few words in honor of our relatives. The return of Dakota relatives from Carlisle Indian School Cemetery, Carlisle, Pennsylvania. My friends and relatives, it is with great respect and honor that I am able to speak on behalf of the Red Thunder Teoshpai, Northern Sisseton-Wahpeton on the Lake Traverse Reservation, regarding the repatriation of the young Dakota men who died at the Carlisle Indian Industrial School in Carlisle, Pennsylvania in the 1880s. Let there be no doubt that every day, month, and year, our young Dakota relatives at the first government-run Indian boarding school, the mission of the founder, Richard Henry Pratt, was to kill the Indian and save the man, was imprinted on their minds, body, and soul from sunrise to sunset. The only solace and comfort of home was each other. But even then, they could not converse in their own Dakota language, as to do so brought beatings and isolation. I can only imagine the fear and despair at an early age of 11 years old. They were wrought with sickness, cold and alone, facing death in a strange land. Surely, wanting most to go home, to be with family and relatives. That final wish of 139 years ago by Edward Upright is being fulfilled now by his relatives and friends, for which I am very grateful and humbled to see. I came to this realization after reading the following letter on our Dakota relatives. On May 6, 1891, the physician wrote this letter to R.H. Pratt, First Lieutenant, 10th Cavalry, in charge about the death of Edward Upright. I have the honor to report of the following named scholar, Edward Upright, Sioux, age 10 years old, at the institution at 8:10 p.m. The cause of death was pneumonia, with which he was attacked about 3 weeks after recovering from measles. Respectfully submitted, C.H. Hepburn, physician. Family history of Edward Upright with Sioux is one interpretation or one name. And the meaning of that has been interpreted. I've asked a couple of elders how to interpret that. Wicha being man, Sioux. And that ending was the one that was discussed. Sioux could be whip. One who is able to use a whip. Or Kisu, Wicha Kisu, man who brings others together. He was born in 1869 on the Devil's Lake Reservation in the Dakota Territory to Wa'anata II, born 1828, died 1897. In Oyanki-Washtenwi, unknown birthday, death 1874. Sometime before 1879, the Wichapsu name was changed to Edward Upright. Edward was at the Carlisle Indian School from November 6, 1879 to May 5, 1881. Wa'anata II was one of three sons of Itancha Wa'anata. He grew up on the Lake Travers, in the Lake Travers area with his mother, a daughter of Standing Buffalo, where they relocated after the death of his father in 1840. When the 1862 uprising in Minnesota happened, he was hunting buffalo on the northern plains. Wa'anata II and Standing Buffalo and their people fled from their Lake Travers homeland into Canada, one returning to Devil's Lake area and the other into northern Montana territory. Wa'anata II donated land to the Catholic Church on Mission Bay of Devil's Lake for their church and cemetery. It's there that he is buried with his family. It is important to recognize that Wa'anata II and his relatives are descendants of Red Thunder, just as we are the descendants of Wakiaduta II, who stayed on the ancestral homelands of Lake Travers. Our common blood grieves for the loss of our relatives, especially for the young and innocent ones who died alone and afraid, far from home. As we repatriate our relatives, be assured that those who have gone before us stand alongside us to welcome the boys home in the spirit world. Thank you for listening to these words. Michael Salvage Sr., Hehaka Duzaha, Swift Elk. Mr. Chairman.
Before I go into my words too, I want to recognize Chairman Yankin from our relatives up north. So I know he's here. So before I say my words, it's always the Itancha to give that recognition when we gather here. So Chairman Yankin, if you want to, and also too with the council, our council here, Madam Secretary, you guys can come up with me. I want to acknowledge you guys too. So. Chairman Yankton, if you want to say a few words, acknowledge your leadership and also your respected community members. So I'll give you that time before I go into my words to Chairman Yankton. But before I turn the mic over to Chairman Yankton, I'm going to call upon my younger brother, Mikey Peters, if you want to come up here and say a prayer and a good way to get us started.
I thought you forgot me. I was sitting there just Janina. When we talk up here before we pray, I just like to thank the leadership and the
pray with me. I was given tobacco, so I'll do the best I can. Oh, Tonkashna, Adewa Kantaka, Abetuki de Dewa Katu, Oshbaya Ota, Wana, Hidipiki, Wopira Tonkachi. Tonkashna Dewa Kantaka, de Sisseton-Wahpeton, Wahpeton, Wahpeton, Oshbaya, Wana Omichawa, Ihana Wohanakapte, Hewashtekte, Wopira Tonkachi. Tonkashna Dewa Kantaka, Ochekia, Nayaku. Tonkashna Dewa Kantaka, de Sisseton ka Spirit Lake, Oyate Hushide, Wichkapo. Uichekapo Hedge Nipte. Tonkashna Dewa Kantaka, de Dakota Shijechaki, Hidipik, Ushina Kirao Tonkashna. De Wochekyo Dawan, Nayaku. Yahana ke Tatanka Naji Oshbaya Dawampi Hoike. Long ago, I was told that long ago this song was rendered on behalf of the Standing Buffalo band that went through here. And they left this song back for us, and they continue to use it up north too. But I want to sing it in honor of talking about our old ways and our ancestors.
With that, I want to acknowledge our Bellin District Rep, Gypsy Wana. Thank you for standing up here. I want to give that acknowledgement to our leaders because they're my colleagues, so we move forward in a good way for our community. Curtis from Akakizahaska, thank you. Dion Crawford, Lake Traverse. Madam Secretary, Myrna Thompson. And you heard a few words from our former chairman, Mike Selvage. As a young man, as a young tribal secretary, I served with Mike Selvage. I was a young secretary at the time, so I respect his words. I learned a lot from him. And also, too, I'm going to share a little bit of my time with, I consider him a historian, too, Jake Thompson. He was a vice chair at the time, and I served with him also, too, in council at the time, years ago. So I'm going to share a little bit of my time so he can share some history. So I want to thank you guys. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to give honor to Chairman Yankton so he can acknowledge his relatives and his leadership also too.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. First of all, before I get into my my little spiel here, I'd just like to recognize and thank and honor the THPO program from SWO to put this together today. I also like to give thanks and honor and recognition to our singers and our elders that were able to make it here today, not only from Sisseton-Wahpeton, but from the Minnewacan Oyate. And also I'd like to give a big thanks to our protectors, the Kichita, for being here today and starting us off in a good way. So before I get into this, I'd just like to, first of all, apologize to all my elders and also ask for the authority today to be able to speak to the audience here today. So with that, as Chairman Hopkins stated, my name is Doug Yankton. I currently serve as the chairman of the Spirit Lake Tribe. I'm honored to speak here today to you on behalf of the Spirit Lake Council and on behalf of the Sisseton-Wahpeton family. She is the oldest living relative of one of our ancestors that didn't get to make it home, Edward Upright. And so if we can have the Wahpeton family just wave so we can recognize and honor for making the trip here and coming down and being with us today. So it's a great honor to have Helena here to be able to be a part of this and participate in the affidavit signing on bringing home one of her relatives. But also that relative that we're bringing home along with the Frambo's boy from here. You know, I was just going around to some of the tables, and historically, if you do some of the research as to what some of our genealogists do and some of our THPO directors and workers do, you'll probably find it that we're all tied here as one Oyate throughout the course of the years. I myself am half from this tribe through my mother's side, through all of the Wanas and the Thompsons, and and then back home. I always say we have about 7,500 people enrolled in Spirit Lake, and I'm probably related to 6,000 of them closely. So I can about imagine on my mother's side how many relatives I have here. So today this is a very powerful thing that we're doing, that's being conducted, and I could, when I came into the door this morning, you could kind of feel that energy, like those relatives are here with us today, and we're going to help bring them home. And with the coordinated efforts between the two tribes, that originally we were one tribe. So I believe that come this early summer or middle summer, we will be putting them to rest respectfully next to relatives at each respective tribe. So with that, once again, I'd just like to thank Chairman Hopkins and his administration, his THPO program for allowing Spirit Lake to be a part of this today. And in the near future, we will for sure be inviting Chairman Hopkins and his team and some of the relatives to Spirit Lake to do similar what's going on today. So thank you. Again, today I have Charmaine, Rena's shy, sitting over there. Rena's also our vice chairman, and we have Mrs. Helena Wanatha Little Ghost and some of her relatives there. And just like to thank you guys for braving that storm and making it down here to be here today, not only with me, but with our relatives from Sisseton-Wahpeton. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Chairman Yankton. Appreciate your words. And thank you for being here, too. Like I said, I want to acknowledge our leadership, too. Thank you for being here and supporting this special event today. Before I say a couple words on behalf of our ancestors that are coming back, I just want to remind our community, too, here on February 19th, 1867, the Sisseton-Wahpeton Dakota bands of the Oteki-Shakowee, also called the Seven Columns of Fire, entered into a nation-to-nation agreement with the United States of America. This treaty is now called the Treaty of the Sioux, the Sisseton-Wahpeton bands. The treaty served to recognize our sovereignty as a tribe, acknowledge and uphold our right to self-governance, and to fortify our status as an independent indigenous nations. And also to within this treaty, our reservation lands were set aside for our inclusive use and occupation in exchange for peace from the United States of America. As it states, our permanent ancestral homelands were established as the beginning of the head of the Lake Traverse, and thence along the treaty line of the Treaty of 1851 to Compesca Lake, then into the direct line of the Raipan, or the northeast point of the Coteau Prairies. Then passing north of the Skunk Lake on the most direct line to the foot of Lake Traverse, and then along the treaty line of 1851 of the place of beginning. The government, through its agents, also made promises to us within this binding document to support and fund our education, see to our substance, and to promote our advancement as individuals and our community. Because our ancestors entered into this treaty, we became what is formerly known within the field of federal Indian law as a treaty tribe. And I just want to make sure that we all know that we are as a treaty tribe and are federally recognized. According to the Constitution of the United States, treaties are the supreme law of the land. And I continue to remind our legislators that when I go on to peer or give testimony. Even though federal government has breached virtually every treaty it's entered into the Native Nations, the constitutional upper of the treaty remains. As a treaty tribe, the federal government has obligations to our people, and it must be fulfilled. These obligations include education, as I previously mentioned, healthcare, housing, hunting, and fishing rights. When we entered into this treaty, there were only about 1,200 Sisseton and Wahpeton Dakota remaining at that time. We had survived the brutal Dakota War of 1862 at the time and witnessed the largest mass execution in American history, the hanging of the Dakota 38. We had been forced out of most of Minnesota thanks to exile, the theft of Dakota territory, and the bounty that was put on the scalps of Dakota men, women, and children. Some of those ancestors, the Sisseton, the Wahpeton ancestors, who first called Lake Traverse Reservation home, were among those Dakota that had been imprisoned in Iowa and then released. We had suffered through wave after wave, hunger and disease, and were in many ways starting over. My ancestor, Wankanto, was one of the treaty signers, and I am proud of him and the others who dared to complete a new future that would ensure our survival in our communities today. While our relationship with the federal government has not been without its flaws, we've been forced many to struggle. We are now have a tribal membership that's over 15,000 strong. In closing, I want to talk about our ancestors that we're here today. And one of the hardships that we face as people is in boarding school era. When Native children were made to attend boarding schools to be assimilated into the white society, they had their long hair short. They've been cut short. Their Dakota names, their ancestors' names, taken away and replaced with English ones. They were punished for speaking the Dakota language and neglected. Many were forced to work as slave laborers at the time, horribly abused, suffered with poor living conditions, malnutrition, little to no medical care, and while being separated from their parents, siblings, and extended families. And some of those children died while they were confined to these government and church-run boarding schools. And they never got to go home to their families. Their memory and welfare is why we are gathered here today. We are signing the affidavit for the return of the Sisseton-Wahpeton children from the Kala Indian Industrial Cemetery. These precious souls, Amos Laframboise, son of Joseph Laframboise, and Edward Upright, the song of Chief Wanata, deserve to return home to their families so that they may know peace in their final resting place, in their ancestral homelands among their people. Friends and relatives, in closing, it is through the repatriation of their remains and their ceremony return to their spirits that we, as family and as people, will begin to experience healing. So long ago, the sacred group of our people were severed, and we will carry historical trauma with us because all of this has happened to us thanks to the genocide that began when Columbus first washed ashore in this hemisphere. While we cannot change the past, we can build a new future. Through the truth-telling, we will restore honor and have the opportunity to forgive, to learn to do better, and perhaps gain some measure of reconciliation. So I end with this. We still have hope, and we are thankful to be able to bring these little warriors home. Metakiawas. I want to give some time to my relative, Jake Thompson. And I consider, and I look up to Jake and his story.
Good morning. It's really good to be here. We wasn't too sure what was going to take place because of COVID and having pneumonia, influenza A. Kind of scared to go out in the community. The coming together of relatives, coming together of our peoples. The chairman from Spirit Lake is a relative of ours. He is a Wana from Puebla. His grandmother was my dad's sister. She married a Smith. She was a Thompson. She married a Smith in Fort Totten. He was a civil engineer, and he made roads in North Dakota. North Dakota UND graduate, the only one at that time to go to college. She had a bunch of children and grandchildren, and he's one of them. This young man, Doug Yankton. His father was an ambassador in the sports world from Fort Totten. They had a fastball team that always placed in all the Indian tournaments in North Dakota and the state tournaments. Very well respected. He had passed away. Through my first cousins, there is ball players that were born. Just to talk a little bit about our relative that come a long way over here, and they're in delegation that come to see who we are over here down south. There's 4 teams years ago that went to state in Fort Totten, and they were our relatives from here, the relatives that lived up there. They went 4 years in a row, and then 2 years they didn't, and they went 4 years in a row. And in there, they took first, second, sometimes they didn't place. The absence of 3 years, they went back again 4 years. Absence of 1 year, they went back again 4 years. Our relatives from here. They are now in first place in the state basketball, in the state of North Dakota. His son made first string on the basketball team last year. Our other relatives made first string. It's hard to do in North Dakota. You have the non-Indian teams, plus you have Fort Newtown, White Shield, Fort Berthold, Indian schools over there. So it's very good to see him come over here. I talked to him briefly. He met relatives from here. He said, we're going to organize our veterans when I get back. And we're going to go to Carlisle with the veterans from here. We're going to establish some kind of meeting, some kind of get-together where these boys here have been doing this for over 40 years. So they'll include them in, and they'll all work out. Not only in this, probably in future endeavors that we probably can come up with to unite us once again. Plus, there's 17 reserves in Canada. There's 17 reservations after 1862 that are Canadians. Can you imagine how strong we would be and how many there would be of us today? We think of them. So we have relatives, many relatives, 17 reserves. And down here we have Fort Totten, Spirit Lake, Lake Traverse. I asked the chairman for a little time. I'm thankful for the singers for loading the pipe, the appropriate songs that were sung. For Del Rey, for taking charge. And because of COVID, this tribe is very unique. They have put together a time, I think possibly every month, they will pray for that spirit of COVID to leave. And did an excellent job. They set up a teepee with the fire going continuously during the work hours, and people come from outside, and plus the people at work can convey and pray for our people for this COVID spirit to leave human beings alone, leave our people alone, and never come back. We help each other, we pray for each other, we always will, we always have. And this is another example of that today. We take care of each other. Over 40 years ago, I asked the elder, Danny Seaboy, he wanted him to put me on the hill 4 days and 4 nights, and that happened. When it was over, we both knew that our elders, this is the first time I'm saying this, our elders were wanting to come home. He watched the fire by himself 4 days and 4 nights. Remember, we were in the sweat, we talked. I was at the fire, they dragged me, he said, from the west and took me to the south. I woke up. That was covered with people that were still coming. They had buffalo robes. And they were laying down on the ground. They were happy. But what does that mean? And he seen that too. A coincidence? I don't know. But it happened. He said, our people are coming home. A month later, a delegation from here went to D.C. to the Smithsonian. I didn't get to go, and Daddy didn't get to go. I was at UND. I didn't hear anything about it, and it was assembled with a Greyhound bus, and color guard, Vietnam veterans, tribal council. Others had went out there to prepare for our people to be brought home. I think there were 33. My sister Catherine was married to Everett Black Thunder Sr. They had wrapped the remains in the teepees. There was teepees set up for them. They heard them singing, kids laughing happily. They weren't in boxes on shelves, no more. They were coming back. Being met by Kushiyama, Kushimene. A lot of relatives, elders in this reservation got together. They remembered the language, the culture, the song, traditions, The veterans were there and the families, and they were received with songs, cedar, sweetgrass, the pipe, the drum, and with dignity and respect that everybody deserves. The ladies embraced them by rocking them and praying with them. The veterans watched over as usual. Color guard staying up day and night, watching over them. And the caravan coming back. And the usual thing there. And we all lived together as a big family, as relatives. No politics, just relatives, a family, a big family, who wanted something to take place. I happened to be teaching at Sioux, and I was assigned to go to Washington, D.C., a program called Close Up. They look at the U.S. government for a week. I didn't want to go. I went. They said, "You're going." I went to the Smithsonian. There was 6 students they were taken care of, teachers from all over the United States. I went to the Smithsonian, went downstairs, and met the lady who was responsible for the remains. And I said, "We're coming back, because I'm a teacher right now. I missed the first time they were here." We went to Connecticut, Smitchin, Powell, I guess. We took a couple cars that way. From there, we left early, went to D.C., and brought back remains over here for the caravan. And I met that lady again. Dayton Seaboy was alive. Frankie Robertson was the commander. Dayton prayed. When he was done, we brought the pipe and we sang 4 songs. All that took a little bit, and that woman cried. I have never seen anything like this of all the tribes that have been out here to come after the remains. You have to remember, in the 1800s, they wanted to study us. Who are these people? These Red Nation people, Aborigine, original people from this land. They wanted to prove that we were not human, we were less, we were subhuman. 1882, the Omaha chief took him to the Supreme Court and proved that we were chief. We were human beings. Conquering bear. Your brain is smaller, therefore you can't think. You're not as smart as us. We can take your land and your oil, your water, whatever we want. That was going on nationwide. Then they took over the land and massacred us, put in boarding schools, institutionalized us. Many things like that happened. After I went on the hill and Sundance, years down the road, I had a dream that we're going to have 10 years later, or 4 years later, after that first time they had went after the remains. And what I saw was like a blade of grass, like my arm, but it was all green, or like a corn stalk, a corn leaf that was waving, grass about that high. Couple of hills, open valley. I asked about that in ceremony and sweat. We waited, we stayed up there at the remains repatriation grounds. Gary Holdenbowl came back from Canada, there was a Sundance, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday or so, and we had this Inipi. Russell Schonrock, Vietnam veteran, him and I went in. And I asked, what does that mean? I don't understand. What was said in the air, I'm happy, I'm free, I'm going home. 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 I asked John Eagle, what does that mean? There was a bunch of us up there. He said, a lot of people probably had that dream given to them. You remembered. I said, I don't know why it was me. We were there at the repatriation grounds 4 years later. For that whole week, we had to run from Browns Valley all the way up to the repatriation grounds on that Sunday. Here comes Gary Holybull and a van, and they had remains with them. I couldn't understand what was going on, why. What happened in the Inipi, that was one of our people years ago. There was a battle against our enemy, the non-Indian people. And this was a woman who was killed. She was shot, she was wounded, and she hid. And she died up by enemy swim. A farmer was driving in a plowed field. He stopped. He did something, told him to stop. He was plowing. He did. He got out and there was remains that was uncovered. There were Dakota, and the story was she was in battle. She was running. She was scared for her life. She died. Her name was Blooming Flower Woman. That's what was said in the ceremony. I'm happy, I'm free, I'm going home. The ladies of the Buffalo Society brought us Dayton Seaboy, Frankie Robertson and me tobacco to go dig a grave. There's a cemetery up there they had wood around it as a fence. They said, this is the spot right here. So we got shovels and we took the tobacco. We told Lillian, she was the cook, Lillian Wana, to go ahead and get the food ready. There was soup and coffee, fried bread, water, tobacco. And when the sweat was over, before the sweat was over, started, we all gathered there. And there were songs that were sung. The drum was there, the pipe was loaded. That person had dignity, that person had respect, they had love. They were home by the people from here to give that. So we offered that food, we offered that tobacco, we offered water, and offered prayers, sweet grass prayers. Cedar prayers. Everything was done. Everybody was humble, everybody was just quiet, but that person was able to rest in peace, being alone by herself all those years. They had to be on the run, moving, got shot. She died hiding. By closing, I want to say this. I was 18 years old, and I got a call. I was in a service that my cousin, Arden Keith Renville, was killed in Vietnam. April 24th, 1968, at Quan Loy. That's northwest of Saigon. It was a medic that were attacked, and he was saving his comrades, his friends. He was with the 1st Infantry Division, same as Gerald Thompson, that were there at the same time. My mother told me, she called. I was stateside, and I went to Fort Ord. I got orders to escort my relative home. I didn't know what to think. When I'm going to San Francisco, you hear that song? Think of me, he said. Heard that's kind of an anti-war song. But that's what he said, and that's where he left to go over. And that's where I left from. 2 years later, I went over. But that time, I was 18. To bring him home, it was a closed casket. He had crawled to get to his buddies. He crawled over a mine and blew him up. I was at Fort Ord for a week of schooling. They tell you what to do and what not to do. Tell you about insurance, the gravestone, all those things. And I try to remember, I took notes, and at home I can tell Joe Renville and Naomi Renville what took place and how their son was. I advised them, you don't want to look. Don't open the casket and leave it shut. And they did. I escorted them home. And we ended up in Aberdeen. We had one stop in Denver. You're the first one off. You salute. When they, from their luggage, they bring them out. And you're the first one on the plane. In the first seat, first class. It was one of the 6 Dakotas from Sisseton-Wahpeton that was killed in Vietnam. 4 of them were my cousins. So going back that far in my life, standing guard at Bader's. They had Cahills, but they were Protestant. The first one to stand guard in those days for 2 nights by myself, no breaks. No emotions, you just had to turn it off. And to explain to the mother and dad, my mom took me from Browns Valley, took me over there, and explained to them what happened to their son. Bringing him home, but he was brought home with dignity and love and escorted by another Dakota. That was so important. Robin was a Marine Corps veteran. Grady was a Marine Corps veteran, Navy veteran, Army veteran, medic also. So in closing, just to say in our history, we have that dignity. Another story just came up yesterday. There was a black man from Iowa who came to Sisseton area and was stopped by 5 policemen, escorted to the jail. Derogatory remarks. But He saw nothing but Indians in the jail locally. They treated him with kindness. He went to the warming house, the old OEP building in town. Park rangers can stay there all day and night now. And he was treated with love and respect again. Given food. They gave him a brand new Pendleton. They gave him money. He went to court. They dismissed it. Think about this. Sometimes society is going to throw away our people. They're park rangers. Those are our relatives. Those are us. That's family. But through everything that has happened to us, they're kind enough to treat a visitor with love and respect and dignity. These people cared for him, just like you were here caring for these people in Carlisle, who probably, because of a government school, did not have prayers, like the mission schools probably did when people died years ago. That's a long ways to Pennsylvania. This endeavor that you're taking up as a community, as veterans, as elected leaders, ambassadors, that's what you're doing. You are bringing them home with prayers, with love, with dignity, and honor. They're going to see their parents in heaven. And everybody, the creators, can look at all of us. You've done something good. You don't think it yourself. You sacrifice your time, your prayers, and your food for someone you don't know. But they belong to us. They always will. They're family. We are strong. We are so unique. When they had prayers, telling Del Rey, I heard about them, for COVID, or for a looking horse, he said, we're probably the only tribe in the United States, 568 tribes, that have a pipe and bring it out and pray with it as a community. You don't have to have a job to go pray, but the workers were afforded that time to put tobacco in that fire. There's a man in that fire, people. You watch that fire. 4 days and 4 nights, sweat lodge, ceremonies. There's a spirit there that helps us. So everything that's being done, we are unique. We have honor and we have love. We have our traditions, we have our songs, we have our culture, we have our language. Because we will continue to live and we will pass everything on that we had learned. I want to thank you for your time. I didn't know it was going to go this long. But this is beautiful. From where I see where you are, we come from beautiful people. And with dignity and love, we will bury our relatives. So however this happens, the sister tribe in North Dakota and us will do something together. Do something to remember. Thank you so much, and good health to each and every one of you.
I'm with Dr. With that, I'd like to have the Fromboys family.
How Good morning to everyone. I guess I'm honored to speak on behalf of our family on the LaFramboise side. And, you know, when I look at this special occasion, I really don't have very, I guess, positive feelings about it. I am a product of the boarding schools. I have gone through all my young years in boarding schools, and I also saw my brothers and sisters go through it. It's not anything that we could say that we're proud of. It was total assimilation of our all the kids to indoctrinate us into the American culture. If I look back on it, there were so many negative things that have happened over the years. And I guess Amos here, that's being honored today, is a direct result of the negative side, where death has occurred. I feel strongly about the boarding school system. I thought they were totally way out in left field as far as me being an Indian child. I struggled throughout my years, and I saw abuse, and I saw us being forced to do different things that we didn't want to do. But I lived through it, so I'm here today speaking. I know there's a lot of people across the different reservations that have really negative feelings about the boarding school system. But my particular boarding school was Tech-Wahpeton, and the other one was Stephan, South Dakota, where I went to high school. And then eventually I had enough nerve to speak to my parents and say, no more, I want to come home. So in my 11th grade year, they brought me home. They allowed me to stay home. So it was a long journey of negatives. And when I say negatives, I mean, I have gone around, I guess, the different tribes, and I happened to run into this one that's talking about trauma, and impacts of trauma on our children, and how it affects them. I was hoping to get that individual speaker to come up to our reservation and talk about these trauma effects that basically hurt everyone, our children long term, and we're still experiencing that today. And we have difficulties. Other people probably just couldn't get through it. And a lot of them died, either through suicide or whatever. It is a system that really traumatized our people, our children, as we went through. So that's all I really have to say about it. I'm honored to be a spokesman, and that I'm honored to see that Amos is coming home, and he's going to be buried. I'm not sure, our planning hasn't really taken place yet on where that burial would be. I don't know if it's by Joseph, but we'll probably talk about that later on today. There's one other person that basically I wanted to come up and say a few words. Celine Buckanaga is the last remaining of our little group, and she's 99 years old. She couldn't be here today, but hopefully Harry could come up and say a few words on part of the Buckanaga family. Harry? So thank you.
Hey, I'm Harry Buckanaga. Some of you know me. I'm a descendant of the Framboys, original Joel Framboys. And he settled here as one of the contemporaries of Chief Gabriel Renville, Juan Atal, those other chiefs that were here. I'm kind of a history buff. I like to look back on family histories, so I know something about the Framboy side. The original Joel Framboys was the third Joel Framboys. His dad was Joel Framboys II, who lived in southern Minnesota by around Mankato area. He married one of Chief Sleepy Eye's daughters and had Joel Framboys III. And then Joel Framboys I was a French fur trader, came up the Missouri River, settled in a place called Fort Pierre, South Dakota, and he established a trading post in 1832. And so he was here very early when the Dakotas were still, hunting and still living on the land. He married one of the daughters of Chief Sitting Bull, and then had Joel Framboys II, who was also a fur trader who settled in southern Minnesota. And then eventually Joel Framboys III settled here. So there's a long history going back, early 1800s. So the Framboys family, their descendants were related to Chief Sitting Bull, Chief Sleepy Eye. And my Uncle Willard, he was a chief too. So I'm very proud of our family. A lot of them are here, a lot of them are not here. And I also welcome the relatives of the other descendants, the other ancestors that we have. It's a beautiful ceremony. Someday we'll all be happy and we'll all be free. And until then, we live a life of hardship, but we also live a life of bonding with each other. You greet your relatives, you greet anybody who comes around and take care of them. I thank Jake for his talk. I mean, everything he said was true. And, our relationship, even with the park rangers, anyway, I just want to say there was also a picture that we brought of Amos Framboys' sister. Her name was Josephine Framboys Budrow. Back in the day when Amos was born, I'm not sure exactly where he was born, and I don't know who his mother is, his mother's name. But Joel Framboys was here, one of the first ones here, and established himself in the Veblen area. Did some farming, he had several women that he took care of, as was the custom in the day. Many of our men were left after the 1860 Sioux uprising and were fleeing for our lives into Canada and everywhere. We even had relatives in Canada, the Framboys. But he had children from 3 different women. Myself, I am a descendant of the Joel Framboys. It's my great-grandfather, and my great-grandmother was Julia Grey Eagle, who was from the Standing Rock and tribe. And then he had Josephine, and he had Alexis. That's my grandpa. And then, of course, Willard the Farm Boys and my mom, Celine. And then my mom is 99 years old. I think she might be the oldest one remaining. She couldn't be here today, so I was speaking on her behalf. And she loved to come to things like this, but she's just simply too old and it's too cold out. So I'm just speaking on her behalf because she's the oldest descendant of that family that we have. So with that, thank you, and send it back to
With that, we'd like to have a family member from the Farm Boys family that carries the name Sleepy Eye. We'd like to have him come forward.
Makiape, Shtachbai Makiape, say Honey Washday. Good morning to each of you, and say Wopura Chichiro Ate, Ina, and Dekshi for what you said, and asking me to come up and say a few words and to speak before my elders here, and then on behalf of the occasion here, myself, I'm very humbled and honored to be here with each of you. And myself, just sitting here and seeing all the relatives that took time out to come over here, and then all the work and all the effort that took place to get us to this point right now, to acknowledge our relatives and our ancestors, and for me, my direct grandfather, great-grandfather, to have all this effort to show our love and our respect for our relatives is something to me that I based my whole life on. I was raised both on, my mom is Seneca and my dad's from here, and so I was raised half here in Sisseton and Wahpeton and half in my Seneca side. And my whole life, I've known who I am and where I come from. With a name like Sleepy Eye, I've had to fight for my name since the first day of kindergarten in Wahpeton Flats. This little boy kind of came running up, and I had long hair and braids, and I was all happy. I remember because I have two older brothers, and I was excited to go to school because I just seen my brothers get papers, and I was like, wow, I'm going to do that. And so I remember, I got all excited, got dressed. My mom, she wrapped my hair in yarn and my braids, and went to school all proud, And first recess we had, there was this, we had a line up to the slide, and this little white boy came up to me and started calling me peepee eye and droopy eye and sleepy nose, and right off the bat, I just remember, just a little tiny guy, I had to, in my mind, in my heart, I knew like immediately I had to put my foot down. I had to say no, like, heck, no way am I gonna let somebody make fun of my name, make fun of my hair, make fun of the color of my skin, and I had no idea that right there was the essence of our people, was the essence of who we are. And I didn't know that from that moment on that I would have to depend on that spirit, that essence, all the days of my education, all the way to my 5th year of college, walking into a university with all white people, telling me that our native people were so uncivilized and didn't have that much intelligence, that we never discovered the wheel. And I was at my 5th year college, so from kindergarten all the way to college, to my 5th year college, I had to have that mentality, like out in the world, like heck no, man, I ain't gonna let nobody step over me. I ain't gonna let nobody make fun of my name, make fun of where I come from or who I am or anything like that. So all the days of my life, I had to stand up for the name Sleepy Eye. And I didn't quite realize the significance or the spirit about it until times like this, when I get to come home, when I get to be around my relatives, when I get to hear our songs, I hear our drum, when I get to hear our language, when I get to see our beautiful elders that have survived, when I get to be around my mother and my father. A couple of years ago when COVID hit, I made a conscious decision. I raised my children around the fireplace. I raised them with our chanupa. I raised them around medicine. I raised them around our holy ways all the days of my life. So after I raised them and when COVID hit, I decided I'm going to go back and live with my parents and help be around them. So that's where I'm at right now, and just sitting here, standing here before all of you, I'm very honored and grateful that we have relatives like you guys that have stood up and stand up for our people since the beginning of time. And I'm grateful that our ancestors, our relatives that have lived before us, that they made prayers, they made gestures, they made offerings. They knew that there was going to be a day and time where our people were going to be lost. Our people were going to forget our teachings, forget about, hey, we're not supposed to be jealous of each other. We're not supposed to be fighting and arguing and gossiping about each other. We're not supposed to be sitting there. I mean, it's so sad for me. When I graduated high school, I used to get in trouble all the time for my name, and just because I was a troublemaker too. But I was in detention in the office one time, and I seen this sign that this Indian counselor had on the door. It said, "Indians are number one." And I seen it all for 4 years. I seen it, but this time I seen the paper, and I took that paper off and I read behind it. It said, "Indians are number one in alcoholism. Indians are number one in drug abuse. Indians are number one in teen pregnancy and suicide and dropout." It had all these statistics. Indians are number one. And as the years progressed, I realized that it's true. It's really true among our people. Out of all the nationalities, all the minorities in America, natives are the minorities of the minorities. We're the ones that we're always pushed aside, we're always kicked onto the curb, or we're the last ones. And I've recognized it throughout the world, throughout the travels, but there's something that is so wonderful that I love, and this is it right here. As we look around, we have our creations, our relatives that are around us, spirits, just like our relative was saying. They're around, they're watching us, they've been helping us all these years. But now, today, right now, we're at a time where it's like people are forgetting of some of the basic, simple teachings that our relatives had. So by doing this, by doing what we're doing, I know that this is an opportunity for our nations, not just our people here, but all throughout the land. As I understand, there's over 7,000 children now that have been found in residential schools in the United States and Canada. And that's just what they found. There's probably more. And then myself, I think about back then, there was nothing to, I guess, monitor what they did to our children. There was nobody ensuring the safety of our children. And I just imagine that the most evilest concept a person can have, that's what they did to our people. That's what they've done to our people. And that's what we are standing up against. And I'm very grateful that today that myself, I see all of us sitting here as we are the answers to our ancestors' prayers. And we're coming back. We're here to get what was owed to them. We are here to stand up for what was taken from our people. We have an opportunity, a chance. I mean, I'm pretty amazed. Like right now, in the Sisseton-Wahpeton people right now, we have an opportunity right now to make a huge difference among our districts, among our communities, our families, with the financial resources that came to us. Almost all tribes throughout the land. Right now, today in history, we have the world watching us. I didn't know this. I didn't realize this until I started traveling the world. At one time, my district, Haipa district, they supported me to go speak at the United Nations in Geneva, Switzerland, and Vienna, Austria. And when I went over there, I recognized, and since that time, and I've been around different places throughout the world, since I've recognized all of that, I've seen the spirit of our people everywhere. It's amazing. So many people throughout the world know who Takashta is. Wankantanka, they know our Creator. They know I hear our songs. I hear our drum. I smell our music. I'll see our chanupa. Way on the top of a mountain in Ecuador, I've seen somebody holding one of our chanupas, making a prayer, singing one of our songs. So I know that the prayers of our ancestors, of our relatives, I know that they had a reason, a purpose for all these. Even though the Wasichus come over here, they tried everything they possibly could to destroy us, to wipe us off the face of the earth. Everything. I always tell non-Indians, if I ever get a chance to talk in front of them, I'll tell them this. Your people, they tried everything to wipe us up. The most evil concepts a human being can come up in your mind. That's what they did to our people. That's what's still going on within our communities. We still have thousands of women being stolen. We still have more and more children being found. We have so much drug and evilness going upon our communities, so much negativity and evil. But to me, when we get to do things like this is the ones that are opening the doors. So I'm very grateful and I'm very thankful that myself, that I had a grandpa and grandma that relatives that they got stolen or they got forced or they had to go over there. But for one reason or another, they didn't come home. And to me, myself, how can a child pass away after just being gone 20 days? There had to have been foul play. There had to be something in there that wasn't right, something that was evil. So to me, like, where's the federal government's responsibility in this? Where is the churches, all the churches that stole all these children? Where's their responsibility? So myself, my thinking and my attitude is that our folks, our relatives, ourselves, that we utilize this in a worldwide campaign to let the people know, hey, now is the time. Our people still need help back home in our communities, in our reservations, in our families, all throughout native land, all through the Americas. Then there are people in the world, I didn't know this either, there's people in the world that are willing to help. There's people that are ready. There's people that are ready to support our nations and our people. But now it's just coming down to the time where it's us. It's up to us. We're our worst enemies. And we're the ones that are arguing with each other. We're the ones that can't get along with each other. We're the ones that are gossiping. We're the ones that are embezzling. We're the ones that are doing things that aren't right among our families, among our communities. So today, myself, when I see the Spirit, this is the Spirit of truth, the Spirit of light, of goodness that is trying to come out among our people. when we get to do something like this is an expression of love that is needed in our communities and our families. So I wanted to say thank you to our Tahashis from the north from coming down and to supporting. And I didn't know, I had no idea that of the Shetashikon that 4 of us were Dakotas and of our nations, of our council fires. And to me that is wonderful. And I got to work with a nation called Potawatomis for 4 years one time, and they have what they call a Potawatomi gathering every year, and they go all different Potawatomi places. So I can't wait till someday we're going to have Dakota gatherings. Well, maybe we'll get to meet all our relatives in Canada and all the way bring our Dakota nations back together and unite, share culture, share our songs, share ways to help and support one another. So that's, to me, what these our ancestors, what they want. They want us to get along. They want us to come together. They want us to support each other. They want us to love each other. I mean, we are in a day and time where the world is waiting to listen to the native. I know they are. They want direction from us. They're looking at, we're the last of the indigenous people that still know what it is to talk to the creations, what it is to talk to the water, the air, the earth, and all the elements. So I'm very grateful and I'm very thankful for my mom and my dad I got to watch them. All the years of my life, I watched them be of service to our people. I watched them all, even just now, I watch them try to help, try to do something good. And then somewhere along the line, there's some kind of evil negativity come in there all the time. So I just want to say thank you to all the elders and all my relatives here that are standing up for this. And into the future, when we bring our relatives home, it's opening more and more doors for healing. Just like my dad was saying, we all have these generational chains of trauma that has occurred the minute Columbus stepped on this side of the world. Those chains started formulating. And so a lot of times we blame ourselves. But no, these aren't even our chains. But when we do things like this, we get to break those chains. So I'm very thankful. Mom, Dad, thank you very much. And I want to thank my brothers and my brother and my sister are here, also part of the LaFramboise family. And they're one of the ones that are on the front line of our tribe, of our nation, and all the tribal workers here. And I'm just now getting an understanding of what it is to work for our people. It's a tough way out there, but there's a new generation coming. I know there's a lot of our young relatives that are ready to unite, ready to bring our people together, ready to depend on our prayers and our songs and all those kind of good ways. So I want to say thank you to our Creator that kind of way for making a way. And I probably got to get rid of this mic. So God bless you guys.
We thank you very much for those encouraging words and reminding us of our ancestors that have come before us and the prayers that they made for us that established a strong foundation of hope that we've continued to build on and live on as the Dakota Oyate. And it is with that reminder of sleepy-eyed that our ancestors made those prayers for us. It is our responsibility to do the same for those that come after us. And with that, I invite Tamara St. John to the microphone for the information she's going to relay about this repatriation.
All right, thank you. Is this working okay? Can you hear me? All right. Thank you all for coming. And I want to share a little bit of background about why we're here and what we're doing and how we got to this point. Now, this actually began with our Rosebud relatives, and they weren't able to come here today, but the Rosebud Youth Council had invited myself and Vine Marks and we met with the Arapaho, the Northern Cheyenne, and the Lakotas, and we all met with the Department of Defense to talk about Carlisle. The Rosebud children had gone to Carlisle and they visited the cemetery there. And they saw, because they are sort of the same age, they're like looking at some of the graves, they really, I think, related to them, and they wanted to know more. Who were they? Why are they here? Why weren't they brought home? And so they set out to find out and to bring them home. So really what these young people did was they led their nation. They not only led their nation, but they led us too. So the chair that you see here for Amos LaFramboise in 2016 was gifted to us because the children in their research, they saw that Amos LaFramboise was the first child to die there. So he was somebody very special to them. And you may have heard in some of the discussion earlier that when Amos dies, after 20 days, when Amos dies there, he was buried, because he was the first child, he was buried in Cumberland County, and he was buried in the county cemetery. Unfortunately, after a while, the locals there, they did not want him in that cemetery. So what happened is they used their land grant, the language within their land grant. They wrote letters and asserted that they did not want Captain Pratt's little Indian to be buried amongst them. So they exhumed him and they removed him. They moved him. Now, he has the distinction, unfortunately, of having been moved more times than anybody. In the 2016 meeting, one of the things that Russell Eaglebear, as a councilman, had shared when he was talking to the Department of Defense, and he was specifically talking about Amos as well as the other children that are moved when they're moved from the first cemetery to where they are now. And what he said to the Department of Defense was, if you had treated our children respectfully, maybe we wouldn't be here. But when you're moving them for convenience sake because you want to build something, then we have a problem. So to bring our children home, this process has been many years. It's been a long process. And so with Amos, we began the process of not only the genealogy, as you've heard from the family. Joseph LaFramboise is, I refer to him as one of our founding fathers. The last night when I was setting up this exhibit, I opened up the 1867 census up here. It was a census taken up at Fort Wadsworth or Fort Sisseton. And as I flipped it open, I saw Gabriel Renville, and there it was, Joseph LaFramboise. And, to me, that was just sort of a sign, that the importance of these founding fathers, this comes into play in this bigger picture. And I want to be sure that everybody understands a few key things that I think we need to acknowledge as we move forward in this. So with the Rosebud Youth Council, the Northern Cheyenne, we began the process of consultation with the Department of Defense because Carlisle now is an active military base. Because it is an active military base, we are beginning the consultation and we have gone through those processes. And essentially what they're doing is they're enforcing military policy on our children. And we have to go through the process just as you would for a serviceman. And there are parts of this that I greatly object to. And I've been reminded by some key people, some older folks, that keep your eye on bringing them home. Don't let anything stop that. But these are issues that I think we will be addressing in the future. The fact that NAGPRA, Native American Graves Repatriation Act, does not apply in this instance. And that's problematic because, as discussed earlier, there are many children. We have many children in some of these boarding schools. For example, just because this is very real, John Eagle, myself, and others, we had been called to a location in Minnesota where there was a boarding school, and there were 6 young Sioux women that were buried there, forgotten in a field. So these things do exist. We may not know all of them yet, but it's ongoing research, so it is important that NAGPRA apply. So in 2016, when we began the process, I knew who Amos was, and I knew the family line, but we had seen also Wahpeton, or Edward Upright. And when you look at some of the documents up here, where it lists the children, it'll say, for example, John Renville. It'll say Gabriel Renville and Mary Renville. With Edward, it only said Wahpeton. It only said Wahpeton. So, of course, I went through the Sisseton records and looked for Wahpeton. And the only one that I really saw in those, and we're talking 1879, the only one that I saw was a man by the name of John Wahpeton. And there was no way to show, because, as you well know now, the job is to find the person, the family, next of kin for a child in 1879. And for some of these tribes, that's an immense task. And, with Wahpeton, it was something that had really bothered me. The photo that you see, the main photo that you see, and it's in the center of the table there, that shows our children. The 5 children that you see there, the 2 girls, Nancy Renville and Justine LaFramboise. And they are the little sisters. They're the sisters of John Renville and of Amos LaFramboise. And coincidentally, I had the opportunity to interview Mr. Francis Crawford and Celine Buckanaga, and she had mentioned a story about Justine LaFramboise. So to put that into perspective, that's how close these things are to our families. These people are not forgotten. Justine and Nancy were the only, I would say, survivors that came home and that lived to adulthood. By the time of 1882, I believe, all 4 boys that went there were gone. All 4 boys that went there were gone. The first was Amos, and the second was John Renville. Amos, according to the records, was said to have been sick. And, we could get into the details. I am a researcher, so I am looking for facts in any of that. Some of those things are very difficult. There were a lot of deaths related to illness because of not having the sort of immune system, crowded in big dorm rooms, all of those things. But having died within 20 days, and then John Renville. And I'm telling you this because each of these boys, we're bringing home 2 boys, but there's 4. And as we do this, I want to acknowledge all 4 boys because they're all important. John Renville, when John Renville dies, I had seen some time back, and the paper is here, in a newspaper clipping that talked about when John Renville died, and it was really a sad occasion. One of the things that I noted in that writing was that, well, here's what it said. It said that he had gone on, they had gone camping. And
really a hot day that he took a drink from a stream, and thus began the hemorrhaging from the nose, fevers, all of those things. And within a matter of days, he passes on. And in the writing, it talks about his little sister, and you see Nancy in the photo. Nancy is sitting with him. And it says that he has, there's two different articles, but it says that he has sort of a faraway look in his eyes. He's speaking calmly to his little sister as he's making his journey. And then it says that as the headmaster and staff there, they're saying that, you know, we're accustomed to seeing children with exceptional qualities, things like intellect, well-mannered, all of those things, but all of these characteristics were especially pronounced in this boy. He must have been an incredible young man. From the photos that I see, you know, a handsome young boy. He must have been loved very much. His father was probably very proud of him. And for just like any parent, you know, you invest a lot in your children. And this began the understanding that these children would have been, these young men would have been future leaders. They would have been future leaders. And so John Renville's passing, it says, our prayers are with his father Gabriel as he takes his beautiful boy home. And so Gabriel Renville was able to go and get his boy and take his boy back to the Lake Traverse Reservation and bury him here. Many people couldn't do that. There were not resources, and there were times I've seen letters with other tribes where families literally begged to be able to bring their child home. Letters like one mother saying, I just want to make sure that she's wearing a good dress. Or one man saying, my wife would like to look upon her beloved child's face one last time. And the answer was no, we do not have the resources to bring him home. So these are very difficult things. The next child is Edward. And when Edward dies, Edward is said to have been sick, and those are the letters associated with that. And the part of Edward was the not being able to find his father, his family. And these things, and bear in mind, I had worked on this for years of looking. And one day in the exhibit room that we had, I got up, I walked over to the word carrier, because there aren't a lot of records from 1879. And I flipped open the word carrier book, and I saw writings that said about Edward Upright. There was his name. There was his name in this book. You know, it was real. And the Kit Fox, who we are very dependent on in the repatriation process, had, I won't name names, but, had, always willing to help. And in this instance, they were helping me to try to find the parents of each of these boys, the translations, when they're in Dakota, all of these different things. And so one of them, they took it to another and found another resource. And then all of a sudden one day, the Kit Fox that works down in the BIA had come down to our office to Diane and I and said, we found him. I said, no, we didn't. We said, we found him. So within a matter of minutes, I was looking at the probate that you see on the table there, where it says that his child has died many years ago at Carlisle. So I flip back to the front, and it's Wahpeton. So many times I tell people, especially like the people with the Department of Defense, that Wahpeton, this is our traditional leader. This is somebody this is the chief of Spirit Lake. This is a hereditary chief line. He's in the history books. This is like our city book. the fourth child is George Walker. And I will say that even though we have the names of the father and the mother, I do not know, I can't find them. I can't find them in any census. I can't find them in any resources. For those that know me, I've been a genealogist for a really long time, and this bothers me, but I cannot find them. But it had been something that, and I'll tell you a little bit about his story. In the word carrier, when I saw the reference to the boys, what they're saying is that the boys had been at the mission school out at Old Agency. They were at the mission school. And it said things like these boys were so well thought of, they were well-mannered, they were intelligent, and they had, it said, for example, George would fill up the water pail without being asked in more than one time. So and it said that they didn't come to school after a while, and they wondered why that was, and then it said, now we know, because they were tapped to go to Carlisle. But George, when George is at Carlisle, there are letters. There's a point in time where he was working with a harness maker, and he went to another employer and learning from him. I don't know what happens, but he becomes very depressed. He's not well. He wants to go home. So there is a letter that he writes in Dakota, and Vine had helped me to share just a part of it at the beginning, where he's saying that, nobody has written me since I've been here. And he says some other things, and he says, and I'll tell you about it when I see you. He's hoping to come home. And the next letter says that to Agent Chrissy, that we talked him into staying on a little while longer. So he's staying on a little while longer, and then the next letter says, you must come and get him. He's not well. It's affecting his health. So when you think about things like loneliness and the things that these children probably suffered, the mental health of that, it must have been terrible. And whatever the illness was with him then, it followed him all the way home. And at the point where I didn't know what happened to him, I didn't know if he was in an unknown grave there, I didn't know, I really didn't know. And so at one point I had talked to, and actually I'm gonna throw you out there in this. I sat down and John had sat down with me and listened to all of the boys, all of their stories. And at that point nobody had heard all of the research. And as we were talking about George and how sad he was, and how lonesome, and it was really sad. And it was overwhelming. And I had began to feel kind of choked up as I was telling it. And John had said, when you bring these boys home, you bring them home like the chiefs that they are. And that was something that stayed with me, as I've gone through this. It really nailed it down in my mind that these boys, they would be those future leaders had they not lost their lives there. The Lakota, the Northern Cheyenne, the Arapaho, their children are all their children there are all the children of leaders too. They're all the children. You see names like American Horse, Spotted Tail, you see names like that. These are all the children of leaders. And why is that? I saw an article in D.C. and it said the chiefs are here in Washington, D.C. And as a condition to the negotiations, they will be allowed to see their children. So that pretty much sums it up of why they were there. One article had also said in one of the videos that I saw from the researchers at Carlisle, it said that they chose the children of the Sioux because the Sioux were most resistant to treaty or agreement. So, there was, these things was. I didn't know who his parents were. I knew nothing about him. And it bothered me because if we're going to do this, I need to be sure with George. So when the Department of Defense came and we were at the college and we were doing basically like this and question and answer with the Department of Defense, this young man stands up in the back and he's wanting to show us something. He's starting to talk and tell us. And I don't know if he's here, Akeisha, did he just step out? And so his presence there, he had been working on language. He had been himself working on language and translating the very letters that told George Walker's story. He had it. He had the story and was, translating them. And so right there in that moment, he was able to share with us that George was an orphan. He had one grandmother who took care of him when he left to Carlisle. So he really didn't have anybody. And that in itself was really sad. And Keisha shared with me the story of George Walker and how he passed on and how he died. So there was a part of that because that was a missing piece. It was a huge missing piece. And if you could come up here, would you please? Because as I mentioned in the beginning, the Rosebud Youth Council, those are there. They wanted to bring those children home. And I really view Akeisha that way too, like these young boys. He's a very impressive young man, and I think I know that embarrasses him. So much so that Chairman Yankton, who had to leave, he said, when you do this, you make sure you bring this young man, he said. And so, like the Rosebud Youth Council, to me, he symbolizes them. And what he was able to do right in that moment was to tell me, what had happened to George. And some of these things, just like the finding of Wa'anata, that probate, and finding the names, all of those things, these are all things that it has that feeling that these things are meant to be, and it's happening now. So I'd like you to, if you would, just talk a little bit about how you found that, how you read that, and maybe what you thought about it.
It's omnichwa you have to ban. Gakho chicha chagana evo na gapi. Ka chicha chama okshina ma takuna ostoja shni. Hell records that Dakota okshina ke Dakota okshina ke Babadal. But so get umaspe. Now, even yomak shiche, but toke taku umaspe uichawa kake. Kawana studiapi. Oh, gonna omaka relations chiche.
Okay, you just have to move it a little bit. Is it okay if you talk now? Okay.
What? Oh, shit. Talking about, Paris-にいまして、たくいわだけヘチャスとかですね。今週はカロリン口をわだけへんわないたやいわくて。がはスペンサー口をわだけへんしてくて。だけはアキシ 되면 또게 차지와 하다문나 이와와 하다 그때 헥타 원에도 아케 납죠가 와한 마유 하비 가와 체야시니까 하비 가한 이나 마유제 육사하나 아와기샤 해우 네 차시마투비 하나 너 코터 시체저드나 boarding schools it washichu chaji wichakupi he washiteshni ga hecha boarding schools it down wichakwashni ga da khod iayapi esta washichu wichaga unspepi shicha cha ka de hayan da khod iapi goalkeeper da khod ya unspeya chinka gampi o naga ho wana de hayan da khod iapi wa ka khni ga ya wa ki chin uka wichawa ka khushiwa Gerald Thompson, got Spencer Wana, got Kushi Carolyn, got Vine Mertz, we check happy. Oh, I see not that good happy. We spend my happy. Hey, you know, could that my happy. But why he said, what people got his hell taku a pet. Chante down a pen. Kushi Caroline Chaji Mayate Cha Yo Makbi Chat Naka Kushi I works it. Ona Kushi I dogi I cut. He chat my chuma. Da khoja nawasu khushi wa unaka khushi chawa ubi hel da khoja bigde tekhina ma kya bi ga da ge passionate chet chashon okay, situation you touch on Danny Seaway, you over that can help your monk be. Danny, okay, for do that. Wash it, wax it. How much there? The credit was come on, get cut. Watching a few touch. To win. Hey, Hector, 1 year to go by repatriation. Okay, repatriation you have been. Unka which how GT Danny unka joke old market. Dakota they won't taka. Kana wata nige shni. Kawana wata nige. Ona hana mitake yuwa naki. Talk no we shot the chat happy. Ka Kushwa Aiba Banga. Kushwa Hunku Kushwa Hunku Sound Hunku took that situation. Great grandma. Spirit Lake at pushing that chapter. No, one Donna Spirit Lake Hivi washte wacheka. And then they picked it.
Thank you very much. And so you can see why, he has become an important part of this, I think, for both of our tribes. So, there's a whole lot more we could talk about, and, we have more to do in this. So there will be other occasions. The idea is to be on the schedule for, at Carlisle. We need to be on the schedule in order to begin this process. And then once we get there and we begin to bring them home, I'm looking at hopefully a timeline of this summer. And I don't see any reason why that won't happen. So we can, we can speak more on this later. I want to just share one last thing, and this is in the program. I'm going to read it for the people that might be listening online. On the front page, it has our children and today's date, recognizing today's date, February 19th, 2022, commemorating our the signing of our 1867 treaty. The inside page, November 6, 1879, the following children left from the Lake Traverse Reservation to attend the Carlisle Industrial School for Indians. Within 20 days, the first child, Amos, died. None of the boys survived to adulthood, and all, with the exception of George, never again saw the lands they called home or the faces of those who loved them. Each were exceptional young men, and each known for their intellect and character. They were highly thought of, and the future of the people rested on their shoulders. We can only imagine how deeply they were missed, and the loss of each as a future leader or chief is still felt today. We are committed to them and to bringing them home like the chiefs that they are. Nancy Renville, Emily, Justine, Laframboise, and our boys, Edward Upright, George Walker, John Renville, Amos Laframboise. The Sisseton-Wahpeton people of the Lake Traverse and Spirit Lake reservations join today in prayer for the return of our children to our homelands. We join other Native nations with healing prayers for the children who were sent far away during the boarding school era, and especially for those that did not return. So thank you all for coming, and we have an additional part of the agenda, and I'll let Delray, and thank you, Delray, for everything that you.
Sit down, and with that, we will invite one of our relatives from Spirit Lake, Sioux-Wahpeton, Marva. She comes to us from the Wahanata family. Comes to talk on behalf of her mother and their family up there. We're very glad that they can make it today, and we ask that our Creator and all our ancestors to watch over them while they're here and as they travel home. Keep them safe.
Your kind in Makiapi, one of Tatios by Nagu in Paduta are my families. I wanted to say, I wish I was a good Dakota speaker like a Keisha. But I also want to say that Auntie Helena is the last living relative of the Wanatas. We got Wanata 1, his son Wanata 2, his son Albert Chesquet, his son William Wanata. His children, Jerome Wanata, Helena, which is sitting over there, Mary Wanata, Elaine Wanata, and Elizabeth Wanata. Elizabeth was my mother. But the only reason why I'm sitting up here is because I was gifted with no shyness, I guess. So, but all the rest of my relatives are really shy. I don't know why, but I'm the only one that's, Hotanka, I should say. So I just want to thank you all for inviting us here. And it's a sad, to me, it's a sad, and again, it's a feeling of so much respect and honor that somewhere along the line, I don't know how to explain this, but we're here because one of them survived. And I've seen pictures of my great-grandfather, Chief Wanata. I've never seen a picture of my grandpa, William Wanata, but I do know this is that what's remaining, I love every one of them. And I keep history, papers of my family. And just to let you know, I'm related to the Sea Boys on this side. Even though I don't know most of them, because my grandma Evangeline passed away, my Uncle David, my Uncle Danny. Uncle David, Uncle Danny. So I just want to say that we have so many relatives. We don't even know where to touch ground, but just to let you know, I married a Washichu, so I didn't marry a relative. Pidamai.
With that, we are going to begin the very important part of this ceremony, and that is to have the ancestor, or rather the descendants of our ancestors, to begin to come forward as part of this whole process of submitting an affidavit to the federal government for the return of our relatives. They would like to have the descendants of these families come forward and begin to sign this affidavit. So when they begin to call you up, you can come and you can put your name to this affidavit, which is a powerful tool because it shows our connection to these ones that have been lost to us all these years and have been buried in foreign soils. But we are returning them to their homelands, to Mother Earth here in the Spirit Lake, so that they can truly rest in peace amongst their relatives. And so we're grateful to have each and every one of you that have come today to be here, to be witness to this, to be an active participant in this, to sign these documents, to submit to the federal government.
have the Wahpeton family to come, and whoever is designated to sign for, and then the relatives of Edward Upright to all come forward too. And we'd like to have all of the names of those relatives to also sign as you come through, so that we can keep that record of the relatives both here on Lake Traverse and in Spirit Lake. Those of you that would like to.
Get it? Get the best side?
Okay. And we'll have the, both of these up to sign, or I'll give him permission here to now, we do have, I've asked a journalist, I have a journalist friend here that has been documenting this story. And Jeremy, if anybody would like to share something, or he might ask, for some of the family, if you'd like to comment on something, just so that you're aware that he is here.
set up here.
Right after this, then we will have lunch. We will have lunch. So please, everybody that's here, stay here. They're getting ready to set up for lunch.
Okay, while we're Okay, while we're getting things set up for lunch, I just want to share a little bit more about what's to come. Once the affidavits are signed and notarized, they will be sent into the Department of Defense along with all proper paperwork. Once that's entered in, we will be scheduling. And then ideally, it will be this summer, or the earlier part of this summer. So then decisions are made as to how we go to retrieve them. And of course, those here know that we are very dependent on our kit box to help, as well as the Buffalo Heart women to take care of them as they come home. And then when we arrive here, and these are decisions that the families will need to make, and hopefully we can help to facilitate that discussion. I'll just share what the Rosebud used and Rosebud Council and others did. Their decision was to bring them home to the last place where they saw those that loved them. So for the Rosebud youth, they had left from Whetstone Agency, and when they boarded the ships, the steamboat. So when they were brought back, they caravaned back to Whetstone Agency, and there was, the first ceremony, first prayers when they first returned. So for us, these children left from Sisseton Agency, and the old agency site out at the Sisseton-Wahpeton Ceremonial Grounds, St. Mary's out there, to bring them back there, and then the families will make their decisions on where they wish to lay them to rest. Joseph LaFramboise is buried up in St. Matthews, and many of the relatives are there up in St. Matthews in Haifa. For Edward Upright, Wa'anata is buried, the father is buried at St. Michael's. Is that correct? St. Michael's. So some of the conversation has been around those two locations, but those are family decisions, and we will make those decisions, or they will make those decisions, and we will help facilitate it. So that is, we're here, we're going to have lunch. If anybody wants to come up, I'll be right here. If you have any questions about the documents, the pictures and things that you see here. I'll be more than happy to share anything that I know. All right? Thank you.
So with that, there is one other person, a descendant from Walton, the Red Thunder family, Councilwoman Dion Crawford.
Thank you. Is this on? Yep. Well, I wanted to just say a really few words. My name is Dion Crawford. My Dakota name is Wowokiawi. I am the daughter of Audrey Gill, who is the daughter of Maxine Dumars White, who is the daughter of Mary Red Thunder Dumars, who is the daughter of Shake Dopa, John Red Thunder, and Mary Sweetcorn. John Red Thunder is the son of Ichahirawi, who is the daughter of Wakia Duta II, who is the brother of Wa'anata I. So that's how we're related. I just wanted to, from the bottom of my heart, for the Thippo staff, for Diane and Tamara, I wanted to say Wopira. And I'll tell Diane later, she's talking, but I really want to say Wopira because when Tamara came this summer and we discussed this. And so I started looking and digging and looking at the records. And it does something to you. It does something to you in your heart that as a mother, it's so painful. Because when I looked at Ngana Edwards' records, he was 12 years old and he was 5'2" at the time of his death. My son River, 12 years old and he's 5'2". And as a mother, I can't imagine what his parents went through having to send him away. And as Tamara said, the children of leadership were targeted. They were targeted because it's easier to steal land and resources from a man and a chief who is heartbroken. It's easier to take from them. And that devious, ingenious plan worked. They controlled our leaders by taking their children. And I know that there have been a lot of tears. It's been very emotional, and I know that it's going to continue being emotional. This is not something that's going to be easy. But when we think about that reunion, when we think about when those boys finally, 140 some years later, come home, when they're brought home, you think about when they're able to pass over and be with their loved ones, it's worth it. It's very worthy, and it's an honor. It's such an honor to be able to do this for these young men, for these boys. And I also just wanted to give a big thank you to everybody that's been involved, to our chairman who's been very supportive. And I have to just say from the bottom of my heart, I'm so happy to meet our relatives, the Wa'anata family from Spirit Lake. It's such a blessing to be able to finally meet Mrs. Little Ghost. I just wanted to share that much. My prayers will be with each and every one of the people that will take on this endeavor, and just to be mindful of our hearts at this time. That when it gets heavy, to just cry about it. Don't try to hold that in because it's painful. And I just wanted to say about that much, and it looks like the lunch is ready, and I know everybody's probably hungry, so thank you, appreciate it.
Doc, yeah, we are getting the plate ready for the blessing of the food. So please, everybody, sit tight. They've got the food ready back there, and we bring it up shortly. And I'll ask one of our first language speakers, and a good mentor of mine, and just a good teacher and professor and instructor, just a good mentor in the community. Clifford Chunku, I've asked him to come up and to bless the food and to say a prayer for all of us as we prepare to wrap up today's awesome event. And we're very thankful that he was able to make it today. I know he keeps himself busy too, and he came from one meeting to be here. He's one of my very dear mentors because of the knowledge he has in both the language and culture. We are blessed to have him here with us today. With that, we'll ask everybody that can to stand and we'll bless the food today.
Tommy Ducky, Chandrastan, a bit use up the door. I can't make it today, like to question our Kantanka, like Unia Pikidana, the ocean Pidapich, dead, like Zania Hippie. No, I would can. Dona ya hipi iota tam ichimani ya hipi kino nina wopida haka chicha pido nako wichashka wa de yoni ha yakua pikiheo nina wopida petra tuka United States government wanted to kill all of us. Dakotas, but there were warriors among our people who did not flee. Wahanaka was one of them. And there are a lot of them that we still need to honor that stood up for our people. And Akichi to Wazuya Wichashka Hetrapi. And now Misha Peti Idera Kewani to Ota Niwaonki home Taku Ota Hana Umaspekta Wachiki Hana Wakua Dakotia Chazeni Taki He Dakota Iapi Wazuya Wichashka. Ebi do wana wachungi apikte. Wata wakantunka. Tukashna wakantunka. Tatia topa kina ake pochitye. Nako wakantakia. Wakupa koza. Na Oasi, Ochi Japido, Nago, Wakatan Kahochi Tiedo, Uchimaka Kutakia, Ochi Tiedo, Derake, Oyate Kide, Mushikapi, Devinijapi, no Asna Ke, Wichaki Giashdo, Kiwai, no Asna Ushu Chakida, not Ushikapi. Zania Umpichipi na ke Wichosani Mushu Chakidao. Nako Hoite Unkichu Pite na ke Umpichi Ashko Eche Nako Dona Untake Piwanashin Makoche Tal Woyushki Makoche Tal Takumpi na Nisha Detka Hiko Ko Waiti Nisha Yachipita, Chicho Pido, Akape to Pidera Kevo Pida Tanka, Awa chakina wopi da kanta ia de kumpi da kota wate na sani ang kumpi unka heche ata kiuskiti mutaku ya pikidena akewi chaki chafto woi te chupikina iwaste pikte na chaki was agwichai na kung tuktawana takto tuktawana hiduya pikte noas na ke waksa pe woka ke hoa unshida waste da ke na yus chaki da mitaku.
With that, with those elders that can, go ahead and start out. Go ahead and start out and lead us to food in the front. And those elders that have relatives, please grab them a plate and take it to them. Yeah, the guests, our family members and guests from Spirit Lake, please help yourselves to the front of the line.